Imagine that every Brazilian fish that tries to enter Catropolis now costs 50% more just to get through the market gate. We're not talking about a small fee, no. Half the school of fish gets left behind, confiscated before even reaching the stall. This is what's called tariff 50%, a decision that turns sardines into luxury items and leaves consumer cats with more bones than meat on their plates. The impact is so absurd that it's worth visualizing. If a Brazilian fish previously cost 10 coins, now it's available for 15. This means more coins leaving the pockets of those who buy and fewer fish circulating for those who sell. A veritable sea of thorns in the trade between Brazil and the United States. And of course, this movement isn't just about fish. It's about power, about who runs the ports and decides who eats what. It's about Trump's City Hall raising a giant net at the entrance to Catropolis and saying, foreign fish only get in if they pay the toll. But after all, why would anyone impose such a high barrier to the point of risking the trust of neighboring oceans and leaving the city itself with fewer options for fish? To understand the tariff, we need to simplify. A tariff is nothing more than atoll on foreign fish. The fish remains the same, fresh, straight from Brazilian waters, but when it tries to reach the port of Catropolis, it is forced to pay an extra price just to be displayed on the stall. This toll doesn't improve the fish. It doesn't make it more nutritious. It doesn't add an extra bone. It serves only to artificially increase the price of the imported product, making local fish seem cheaper in comparison. It's as if City Hall had placed a security guard at the entrance to the market saying, "Come in, Brazilian tilapia, but only if you leave half your value here." So the consumer looks at the local fish and thinks, that's cheaper. But it's not because American fish has become cheaper. It's because Brazilian fish has forced to become more expensive. Now, why would Trump, representing City Hall, do this? The official statement is simple. Protect the fishermen of the inner lake, in other words. Create a barrier that hinders competition and gives local producers an advantage. After all, if the local fishermen continue to buy tons of Brazilian fish at low prices, domestic fishermen risk closing their nets and abandoning the port. This type of decision is often presented as a heroic defense of local labor. We need to save our fishermen. We need to maintain the jobs of the inland lake. But in practice, this giant net erected by City Hall doesn't just capture foreign fish. It also ends up trapping the cat consumer, who, without realizing it, ends up having fewer fish options and increasingly high prices at the market. And that's where the big question arises. If the net protects the fishermen of Catropolis, what happens to the Brazilian exporters who depend on this trade to maintain their schools of fish circulating? But realize the irony of this network. To protect a lake, City Hall is messing up the entire ocean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We'll see how this affects exporters, consumers, and even trust between entire ports. Before I continue, I ask you one thing. If you want to understand how the big decisions in Catropolis really affect your fish dish, subscribe to the channel now. Here we translate power games into stories you understand, and that no one else can explain. Like this. And across the ocean, Brazil feels the direct impact of these tariff hikes. Imagine a Brazilian dock crammed with fish, sardines, tilapia, and even premium fish, stacked in crates, all ready to set sail for Catropolis. But when they arrive at the American port, half of that value is confiscated by City Hall tolls. The result, much of the stock is stranded, without a buyer, rotting on the dock. Exporters, who once made a living shipping tons of fresh fish to the American market, now find themselves with full warehouses and dwindling contracts. Previously, each shipment was converted into fish currency that circulated in the Brazilian economy. Wages paid, investments made, jobs maintained. Now each shipment yields less or simply nothing because Brazilian fish has lost its competitiveness, and the domino effect quickly sets in. Fewer fish coins entering Brazil means less money circulating in the hands of fishermen, distributors, and traders. The economy begins to smell rotten. Fish, that odor of wasted opportunities. The Brazilian government, which also counted on these flows, sees its revenues decline. Ultimately, it's not just the exporter who suffers, but the entire surrounding market. And worse, while the stranded fish stocks increase at the pier, consumers in Catropolis have no idea how big the impact of this blockade will be. For them, all they see is more expensive fish on the shelf. But for Brazil, this barrier means threatened jobs, bankrupt companies, and an economy that, without fish-like currencies, is swimming in increasingly murky waters. And if the situation already smells bad in Brazil, in Catropolis, the network of this tariff also hits those who are least affected. Wait, in Catropolis, the 50% tariff hike may even seem like a victory to some. Local fishermen, for example, set off fireworks. Without direct competition from Brazilian fish, they can sell their own stocks at higher prices. The domestic market now revolves around domestic fish, and the political rhetoric sounds good. We are defending jobs in the inland lake, protecting our national production. But the story changes completely when we look at the big cat consumer. At the port market, sardines that once cost 10 coins now cost 15. Not because they've become more nutritious, fresher, or rarer, simply because the city council decided to cast a net over foreign fish, artificially inflating the price. It's what they call protection, but in practice, it's nothing more than disguised inflation. And it doesn't stop there. With fewer cheap fish entering the market, the variety diminishes. Consumers who once had the choice between tilapia, sardines, or imported salmon now find themselves restricted to the local fishery, which, besides being more expensive, often fails to meet all demand. The result? Longer lines, fish of questionable quality circulating, and increasingly poorer dinner plates. While the fishermen celebrate, the rest of the city pays the bill. And the irony is that this type of tariff may even save some jobs in the short term, but at the same time it erodes the purchasing power of millions of consumers. An unequal exchange in which few hold the full net, and many end up gnawing only the remaining spine. And if in Catropolis the cats pay dearly for this policy, the next step is to look beyond the lake. What happens when other oceans decide to react to this net cast by City Hall? And like every sudden move in Catropolis, this tariff hike isn't limited to the inner lake. Across the ocean, Brazil also has nets to cast. If Brazilian fish are blocked with 50% tolls, the natural response is to raise tariffs on American fish. A counter net, a retaliation. Suddenly, what was just a toll becomes a real one. Fish war. With closed ports, stranded cargo, and diplomats trying to forge agreements amid the smell of fish bones scattered across the docks. And in this war, there are no clear winners. Brazil loses ground in Catropolis. Exporters suffer losses, and local fishermen on the American lake discover that selling at a higher price doesn't pay off when other markets are also closing to them. Trust between oceans plummets. Trade, which should flow like a free shoal, becomes a tangle of tangled nets, with each port suspicious of the next. The 50% tariff hike was presented as a protective gesture, a defense of local fishermen, a banner of independence. But the truth is, protecting a lake at the expense of the ocean may prove a bitter victory in the short term. Some keep their nets full. In the long term, everyone finds there are fewer fish floating around, more bones left, and an increasingly expensive feast for the entire city. And that's the moral. When immediate interest is placed above collective trust, the economy ceases to be a moving shoal and becomes merely a walled-off pond. It seems safe, but it's doomed to dry up. In the end, the question remains simple. Was it really worth paying so much to secure a lake when the iwi xiao price of doing so was losing the entire ocean?